So welcome everybody to our session today on the linked data enrichment. We had a session, if you recall, 2 weeks ago. In fact, let's go take a look at our ALMA 2025 Roadmap Webinar Series page. We had a session 2 weeks ago where we spoke about linked data with a focus here primarily on bib frame records and how the bib frame records, like the other MARC records, support the linked data info cards. And we talked about how there's relationships from certain fields to the authorities, etc. And we didn't want to put everything into one hour session and have to rush everything. So we're having this session now, today, May 6th, to discuss the linked data enrichment. We're going to go more in depth into the linked data enrichment in a moment, but I will point out here that there are two types of linked data enrichment. There's what we call permanent and what we call on the fly. Today, we're going to be talking about the permanent. I'm switching pages now to the ALMA 2024 Roadmap Webinar Series from last year. And here we also spoke about the linked data enrichment on Tuesday, June 4th. When we spoke about the linked data enrichment on Tuesday, June 4th, the previous time, that's the on-the-fly linked data enrichment. So today we're talking about the permanent. We're going to talk about what the differences of those are in a moment. I'm simply pointing out now that you can also see the recording here from the 2024 Roadmap Webinar Series on the on-the-fly linked data enrichment. And also, while we're here, a few more administrative matters before we jump into our session today. The 2025 Roadmap Webinar Series here, I'm going to send out the link to everybody, even though I know everybody's got the link, or at least most people have the link. I sent it out right now. We got a lot of sessions here. So on this page, we have the previous sessions and the upcoming sessions. It includes here the links to the accompanying resources, which is typically a PowerPoint. Sometimes it's a blog. And you can see here all of the recordings. So we've already done the AI Metadata Assistant. We've done the Primo V Mix Panel. 2 weeks ago, we did the linked data developments in 2025. We're now on the linked data enrichment. And next week, we've got the Primo Next Discovery Experience. So if you haven't yet registered for that, you can already register here. And then on May 28th, we have another session where you can already register on the XSL normalization rules and processes. That's a brand new feature, just came out this month, the May release. A very highly voted feature in the Ideas Exchange, very, very highly. So it's a new method of creating normalization rules, a very exciting development. So you can already register for that. Then we've got several more planned. We don't yet have dates on them, but we've got more planned already. We're just trying to squeeze this in. There's so many webinars going on that we need free time, but we will schedule them in. But there's already two more here that you can schedule next week and May 28th. Also, I'll remind everybody that on the Ex Libris YouTube channel, you can just search for Ex Libris Limited in YouTube. You can view here all of the recordings. For example, if I click here on the playlists, you'll see here we've got a playlist for the ALMA 2025 Roadmap Webinar Series, which includes the 3 sessions we've already done, and either later today or tomorrow we'll have the recording from today's session. We've also got the ALMA 2025 release notes, which includes a section here on the linked data enrichment. I'm just going to search for linked even. And let me search for linked data. I didn't realize there would be so much just with linked. So linked data enrichment, this is what we're talking about today. The permanent linked data enrichment came out in February with another development related to it this month in May. We're going to talk about that. And the online help here on the linked data enrichment configuration, I'll also send that out in the chat, even though you can easily get that via a simple Google search. So without further ado, we're ready to begin. Let's take a look at our plan for today. So the plan for today, we're going to talk about the difference. Let's just jump right in even. So the link data enrichment, how does it differ from the on the fly? So we stated earlier that we're talking about permanent link data enrichment and that we already talked about the on the fly link data enrichment back in 2024. The difference between the two is they both add a URI, a Uniform Resource Identifier, which is not a ex libris invention by any means. It's a standard MARC invention. It's a link put into the field. For example, let's go look at a 650, a link that goes into the field that points to the resource. So in the subfield 0 and or the subfield 1, the URI can be added to the field in the bibliographic record. And we have it now with the permanent link data enrichment that it becomes part of the record that is saved in the repository. That's the permanent link data enrichment. Permanent link data enrichment adds the URI to the bibliographic record permanently, or until you delete it if you want to delete it. But it adds it to the record in Alma saved in the repository. The on-the-fly enrichment adds it either during the export, which is done via the general publishing profile, or if the record is retrieved with an API. So in the on-the-fly, it doesn't become a permanent part of the record. It's merely added during the export. With the permanent, it becomes part of the record, and we're going to see that. Why is this useful to the library? More and more institutions are adding the URIs. If you copy records from WorldCat or URI or Library of Congress, you'll see many cases where the URI is already in there. And it's useful if the institution, for example, is sharing records with other institutions or a larger catalog, and that larger catalog is doing some kind of integration with linked data. The URIs serve the purpose of going out and getting additional data on whatever entity that URI is related to. Let's go look at the configuration. I've got two Almas open today. One where we'll be looking at the configuration, and one where we'll be doing the actual functionality. So here I'm logged in as Yulia, and this is in Chrome. Here we'll be looking at the configuration. And then I'm also logged in as Alicia in Firefox. And here I'm Alicia. Here we'll be doing the actual functionality. So I've got the two Almas open so we don't have to keep closing and opening different things. We can look at a record and simultaneously go see the configuration to see what happened. As in all of our sessions, you can send in a chat. We're joined today by Adina Marciano. Adina, thank you for joining us. I know your schedule is very busy. So if questions come up which relate to development plans, why certain things were developed the way they are, we're going to turn that over to Adina. Otherwise, Adina will take other questions as well, or I'll take questions, but feel free to send in your questions via the chat. So let's jump into the configuration. So we can access the configuration via the configuration menu. So on the bottom left here, I'm going to click configuration. And under resources, general, we've got link data enrichment configuration. Let's go into the link data enrichment configuration. So there's three areas, and we're going to see live examples of all three areas. We can define this for names, for subjects, and for local authorities. Local authorities was just added now in May. The May released. It's 2 days old, this development. So let's go into the names. So what do we have here? We have the vocabulary source code. Which vocabulary do we want to work on? I have activated here LC names and GND, GND being the German National Authority file. Then we have the authority URI. That is here, let's look at the one for LC names, for example. That is the beginning of the URL of the URI Then we have squiggly brackets with a 0 and a close the squiggly brackets at the end. And that's where the identifier goes in. The identifier, we're going to take a look at real examples. The identifier comes from the authority record and then gets added here to the URI so that it goes to the entity according to the URL. Then we have what subfield do we want to put the URI in? It can be 0 or 1. We recommend that if it's not VIAF, it goes into 0, and if it is VIAF, it goes into 1. Again, we're going to see examples that will become more clear. Then we have a column here, add VIAF link. Do we want to add also a link for VIAF, the Virtual International Authority file? I have true listed here. I have chosen true for LC names and GND. And I have said here that I want to put that in the subfield 1. And again, that's what we recommend for the VIAF. We also mention that here on the link data page, on the configuration page, it is highly recommended and considered best practice to use subfield 1 for VIAF. That's our recommendation. Of course, you're free to do as you like. Recommended in subfield 1, that's where we have put it. And then the enrichment type. Are we using permanent or are we using on the fly? Or actually, there's also an option for no enrichment. It's also possible here to add another one. We can say add row, and you can, if you're using another vocabulary source or you deleted a vocabulary source from here from whatever reason and want to add it again, the same columns that I just discussed, you can add on your own another row. That's the names. Let's go look at the subjects. The subjects is going to be extremely similar, except it's not going to have the columns for the VIAF because it's not relevant there. So I'm going to go back to the list of tables and let's go look at the subjects now. So like I said, it's the same except for the VIAF. So I have here the Library of Congress JANA form terms. Again, it's going to a particular URL with the squiggly brackets, 0, close squiggly brackets. That's where the identifier will come in, and I've got it going to subfield 0, and I've got it using permanent enrichment. And then I also have Library of Congress subject headings, Eurovoc, and GND. So we'll be looking at examples of all of those. And they also have all of the appropriate URLs, the subfield that they're going to, and then also the local authorities. So the options here of what to add to the local authorities are whatever local authorities, first of all, if you're using local authorities, and then it's whatever local authorities you're using. So you probably will have different ones than I have. You won't have probably the Icelandic authorities unless you're using those Icelandic authorities. That's the second ones I've got here. LC names, LC subject headings. I've got it set up here to work for LC names and LC subject headings. The global identifier is going to come from the 035 subfield A. It's using the same URI that I have defined in the table for names and subject headings. It's coming from the 035 subfield A when it takes the identifier, and if there's multiple 035s, it's using the one that has the DLC prefix. Even if there aren't multiples, it's going to use the one with the prefix DLC, and we're going to see all this in a moment. So that's my setup. Now let's go take a look at my records. Now I'm moving to the other ALMA, the ALMA that has the examples. So we're going to look at two examples today. Food culture and literary imagination in early modern literature in early modern Italy. And let's also look at this one here. I believe it's treasured and not treasury. Let's take a look. Here we are, treasured Polish songs with English translations. So we're going to do two things now. The permanent enrichment works in two ways, or to say it a different way, a bibliographic record becomes permanently enriched with linked data in two different ways. Either when the open authority headings, which is the F3 shortcut key, is invoked on a bibliographic record in the metadata editor, or when the jobs link bibliographic headings preferred term corrections occurs on a record. And we're going to look at that, both examples. We're going to look at both examples of that. So let's start with this one, treasured Polish songs with English translations. And here we're going to do the open authority headings F3. So first of all, we're going to see that right now I do not have any URIs. Let's go take a look. So if I look here at my 600s on, I do not have any URIs here. I don't have any subfield zeros or subfield ones. I have a wide variety of vocabularies. I've got FAST, GND, LC names, Eurovoc, LCGFT, the genre form terms. And I'm going to take a picture of this just so that later when I say now the URIs are added and previously we didn't have the URIs, not that I think you don't believe me, but we'll have proof. But I know you believe me anyway. But let's go take a look. Let's just save this so we'll have a before and after we add the URIs. So here's my before. And let's go through these. So let's say, for example, let's start with this one here, Krakow on the GND. So I got a 651, which is a geographic name. I have a second indicator 7, meaning the vocabulary is defined in subfield 2. So it's using the GND, the German National Authority file. If I were to say here F3 or open authority headings, it will open to the GND, looking for Krakow with that specific spelling, finds it here. Now, before I do select, just to show how is the URI going to be built, I'm going to say view to look at that authority heading that it's linking to. So this is linking to this one here, which has a 3094802 here. And oh, that's the geo names. Here. 0400473. Let's just take this with us. So it's got this number here. Let's go put that also into our notepad. Into our Word document. That's the number in the authority record, or the identifier to be more exact. And then I'm going to go back to the configuration table for the subjects and look at what we have here for the GND. So this is the URI that we've defined. That means my final URI should be this, because it's taking the URL that I defined in my configuration table and the identifier instead of the squiggly bracket 0 squiggly bracket. I should get this. And if I stick that in a browser, even before I get it, I'm going to stick it in here. And I get here Krakow in the GND. So let's now come along here, back to my Alma, and I'll say select. And there we go. It added the URI in the same way I described. So I've got a link now permanently. That's the permanent enrichment. And if that, I'm going to copy this one as well, straight from the bibliographic record. And that goes to the GND for that specific heading. That's our first example. Let's take a look also at an LC names. So let's come back to our bibliographic record. And I'm using multiple authority names. I'm using a priority where the first one I check is LC names, then I check NLI, then I check Taiwan name authority file, then I check GND. And this one here, Mario Wharton, if I do an F3 on that or an open authority headings, that one's going to LC names because it found it in the first one. It's in the LC names. And if I view this one, I see here that the number is here, 201004128.5, NO. If I say select on this one, it puts it in with that suffix of that number we just saw, with the URI that we have defined in the names, ID Gov authority names. So if I were to come now to the names, now we see why it's nice that I got Yulia logged in here and Alicia logged in the actual Alma. I don't have to keep closing and opening. So here it went to ID Gov authority names, and then it added the identifier that we saw in the authority record. And then if I take this and I were to stick that in a browser, it'll go to the authority names. I'm just sticking in a browser to show that if someone were to use that URI in some other application, it is really going to that correct entity. And here we are in the Library of Congress name authority file for Mario Wharton. Now notice also here, it added a link to the VIAF. Why did it add a link to the VIAF? Because I said here for the LC names, add VIAF link, I said true, and I said put it in subfield 1. So it truly did add it because I said true, and it put it in the subfield 1 because that's where I said to put it. And if we pop in there, we've got it for VIAF for Mario Wharton, also known as many other names, Polska, Artiska, etc., etc. And here's ours, the Treasury of Polish Songs. This is our work that we're looking at right now. Let's see a Eurovoc. This is a subject with Eurovoc. So this is literatura. This is not only a subject in Eurovoc, it's a multilingual. There's something called a multilingual authority file. Whole nother topic amongst itself. We could do a 1-hour webinar just on that someday. So this one has a second indicator 7, meaning the vocabulary is defined in subfield 2, and in subfield 2 we have Eurovoc. So let's just do the F3 here, open authority headings. I'm just going to choose the literatura, and it adds here the link in the subfield 0. And if I take that with me, stick that in a browser. Now this is an XML, so it's going to look a little different. In fact, I'm going to stick that into my Edge just because the XML appears a little nicer here. So it brings us to the Eurovoc for literatura. Here it is, the literatura. And here it is for the PL where we were, for the Polish. And it brought us to the correct place. We've got also for local authorities, but before we get to the local authorities, let's look at a GND for both a subject and a name. So here we have folk music. Let's take notated music on the LCGFT, actually. We haven't done the Library of Congress genre form terms. So I'm in a 655. 655 is the genre form. I've got a second indicator 7, meaning my vocabulary is coming from subfield 2. Let's go see how we defined that. So back to the subjects. I'm now in the names. Back to the subjects. Here's my LCGFT. So that's going to go. Let's do the same thing we did before. It's going to go to this one, and it's going to put it in the subfield 0. Let's follow that along and make sure she's working properly. So it's going to go here, And instead of that squiggly bracket 0 squiggly bracket, it's going to put the identifier. So let's go see what's happening here. I'm going to say F3, or open authority headings. And let's look at this first. View. Of course, we don't need to look at it for this to work. I just want to show the steps of what's going on behind the scenes. So this is GF201, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it should now build a new URL that looks like that, because it's taking the URI from the configuration table, it's taking the identifier from the authority record. Let's see if that's really going to happen. I'm going to say select, and that's what it did. It brought us this, and this should go now to the Library of Congress Joniform terms. And it did. Here we are, LC Joniform terms, LCGFT for notated music. So far, everything's working nice. We already did the Eurovoc. We already did the Library of Congress names. Let's take a GND name. We haven't done a GND name yet. So I've got a name here, Poland Konigin Hedwig, which is actually the Queen. Notice it says here 1373, by the way, because the other vocabularies say 1374. GND says she was born in 1373. And let's do on this one also. This is Queen Jadwiga. We know her as Queen Jadwiga. We're going to do the F3. Now this time, it's going to the GND. You see it linked to the GND. It looked at LC names, didn't find a match. Looked at the NLI, didn't find a match. Went to GND. It's linked here. If I look at the GND one, I'm going to do a view. I see that Queen Jadwiga has 1187, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Here. And for the DE 101. And we'll do select. And it added it. It added DNB info. The reason it added the DNB info is because in the names configuration here, I'm going back to the names. For GND, that's what we've got, DNB info. Then instead of the squiggly bracket 0 squiggly bracket, it added the identifier. So this should go to GND for Queen Jadwiga. Famous Queen Jadwiga from 1373 or 1374. And here it is, with her 11s dotting, 1373 to 1399. Queen. We haven't yet seen a local authority. Let's take a look at a local authority. So I'm going back to the metadata editor. My 600 here is a local authority. If I were to look here in my ALMA under authorities, I'm leaving my bibliographic record for a moment, and I'm going to look for Queen Jadwiga. So Queen Jadwiga, it's a local authority. I'm in my institution. And if I edit this record, just to take a look at it, I'm editing an LC name authority right now. It's LC names, you can see here. And note it has a DLC prefix in the 035. Let's even take that with us. A DLC prefix in the 035. I'm going to say here that we've got Queen Jadwiga. The J is a ya and the W is a va. Queen Jadwiga has a 035 like that. Now, back to my configuration. For the local authorities, I'm also going to show that that heading is linked to the local authorities. Here we're saying use the one with the prefix DLC And that's what we just saw here. It's got a prefix DLC like this. That's not a prefix DLC. That's a prefix OCOLC. And then it's going to also, here you see we don't have the URI because the URI for LC names is coming from here. Let's take that with us as well and stick that here as well. I think I forgot the D here if I'm not mistaken. And here we've got that. So we should get a combination of this with the identifier going instead of the squiggly bracket 0 squiggly bracket. Now, if I come back to Queen Jadwiga, let me close my authority record. Back to my bibliographic record. And if I come here and do an F3 or an open authority headings, I see here that it's linked to the local. It says parentheses local. And if I view, this is my local one because I took the Library of Congress one and I changed it locally and saved it locally. I added, because in my institution, everyone was searching for Queen Jadwiga and it wasn't in the Library of Congress one. So I added my own heading. I also added my own heading in some other scripts here. This says Queen Jadwiga in another language, and this says Jadwiga, the Queen of Poland, in another language. And I'm going to say select now. And it added, let's take that with us. It added that, which is N842116994. It's taking that from the 035 field. And it's taking this from the names configuration table of the linked data enrichment. So it brought us this. So if I stick this now in a browser, let's leave this open so we see that here she's 1373. And in Library of Congress, we'll stick it in. And here, 1374. But it's bringing us to Jadwiga, Queen of Poland. We also see with the local authority as well as the global authority, it's also bringing us to the VIAF. And if I come here to the VIAF and I stick that in my browser, brings me right to the VIAF. From a local authority record, this was just developed now in May. From the local authority record, we also get the link to the LC names and to the VIAF using the identifier that was in the 035 field with the prefix DLC. So until now, we have enriched our record with a wide variety of URIs. We did it for GND on names and on subjects. We did it for Eurovoc on subjects. We did it for LC names on a local one, LC names on a global authority. And we saw that it added a subfield 0 for the LC names and the subfield 1 for the VIAF. Now we're going to do the permanent enrichment. Adina, is there anything we should address before we go to the permanent enrichment from the questions that you saw pop up?
So there was one question that popped up that I answered. The subject's configuration is subjects and others. Perhaps we can clarify the title and we'll take that to consideration because there are other fields that support URIs that are in there as well, such as language. That was one question. And I see now a few more questions have popped up.
Well, let's make sure, Adina, that we have time to show the permanent. So maybe we'll save those for after the permanent.
I'll take a look at them and I'll
okay, if I can because we're already at 36 past the hour. So what we'll do now, somebody did ask though, what happens if I already have a subfield 0 or a subfield 1? You'll get an additional one. It's not that you're only allowed one subfield unless you have some kind of rule that's going to delete them or something. In fact, I have a rule that does that. I'm going to remove these now because now I'm going to do the permanent enrichment. I could just not save it, but I made myself a normalization routine that gets rid of all my URIs. So now I'm going to remove them. And I'm going to, now I don't have any of those URIs, as you can see. I'm going to release this record. I didn't even need to remove them. Now I'm going to do the permanent enrichment on 2 records. I'm going to make a set first of those records because for the permanent enrichment to work, we said we need to have the link bib headings and the preferred term correction jobs run. And before that, we need to do the unlinked bib headings as if it's a brand new record. So we'll use this one that has Queen Jadwiga. Let me go to the physical titles and let's do a search here. I'm going to say subject. I can even say subject cell C contains phrase, and it'll find it. Let's make sure of that. Let's say this. Did I spell that properly? I might not spell that properly. If not, we'll just do title. There we go. So it found it because it finds also the non-preferred terms, but we'll save that for another day. And so we'll take that record and we'll also take one with title. I forgot exactly what the title was. I believe it was Italy, Food, Culture, Imagination. Let's see. And I'll put an or here. And then I'll make a set. Great. So we've got treasured Polish songs with English translations with the Queen Jadwiga. And we've got food culture and literary imagination in early modern Italy. Let's save these as a set because we're going to run a job on it. Save and filter. I will call this Link Data Enrichment, LDE, afternoon, because we had a morning one already, just so we can differentiate. And I won't make that a private set, even though it really doesn't matter, and save. So now I've got a set. Let's look at the set and just confirm one more time that we do not now have the link data enrichment. So I'm going to say content here. And let's look at these. Here's the treasured Polish songs that we saw before. Notice it found the Queen Jadwiga. Oh, it also has the names Queen and Jadwiga in the preferred term. And there's no URIs here, as you see. No URIs. Then we've got the food culture and literary imagination in early modern Italy. Also, you see here, no URIs. First, I'm going to run the job unlinked bib headings because those headings are linked. And for the whole process to take place, it needs to be unlinked and then linked via the jobs that we'll see in a moment. So let's run the job on that, the unlinked bib headings. We'll say admin run a job. I'll choose the job unlinked bib headings. So we're making it as if they're brand new. And next, here's the set we just made a moment ago. Next. And she's off and running. Now, we're also going to run the link bib headings that already completed. Alma is extremely fast. Already done, process 2 records. Now, there's jobs. I'm going to say admin monitor jobs. And under scheduled, I'm going to go to repository. And I'm just going to run this now to save time, and then I'll explain. So there's 2 jobs that run every evening if you have them activated. By the way, this whole process works if you have the preferred term correction activated. That means these jobs here need to run. And it also means that under configuration, resources, general, other settings, you have, I believe it's that the disabled preferred term correction job is false. It's a double negative here. We're saying false on the disabled, which means enabled is true. So if that preferred term correction job, which we just looked at, is enabled, meaning you're using the preferred term correction, then all of this works. Otherwise, it doesn't. It because the heading needs to get corrected. Let's go back and see our jobs now. Okay, so that job finished, as you see here. So now we're going to run the preferred term correction. These jobs run automatically in the evening or the early morning, depending on your perspective of when you go to bed and when you wake up. But I've got them defined in my environment here to run at midnight and 4 a.m., which I call middle of the night, early morning. So let's go to repository. So link bib headings, that runs every day at midnight. Now we're going to run the preferred term correction. Now I'm running these manually because I have special permission, but you won't see the run now. They run automatically. As we see here, they're scheduled. You can see they're active. They're in the schedule tab. So in a typical institution, they just run every night or every early morning. Now, that job finished also. Great. So now let's go look at our records. We're going to say, we're on good time here, 1743. I'm going to say admin manage sets. And here's our record. Here's our set. Let's get the content and see if now we do have the URIs. And sure enough, we do. We can see here that all of these were added. Here's Queen Jadwiga got added. Polish folk songs, all of these got added. We saw a moment ago that we didn't have the URIs, and these now got added here via the job. In fact, if I click here, I can see this was last updated 1643. It's now 1644. It's an hour behind my time because I got this environment in Amsterdam. So it was just updated now by the job preferred term correction. Perfect. Let's take a look at the second record about the authorities. This one here we just saw. Okay. Yes. Okay. And back. And now food, culture, and literary imagination, which just a moment ago did not have the URIs, now does have the URIs. Let's even check one out here. Food habits. There's an authority record on food habits. Let's go take a look at food habits. Make sure not only that it got added, but that it really works, that we trust Alma. And sure enough, it got added. And let's check out one more. Food service for GND. And here we are, food service for GND. Let's also check one of the URIs for here. We used to have one in here, Pretty Lady. Oh, that's in the 505. That's one of the songs, Pretty Lady. So let's take Polish songs itself and come right here to the 650. And there we are, songs Polish. So in summary, I'm going to stop for one moment the sharing, but I'll remember to reshare. So in summary, what did we do? We saw that we have configuration tables where we can define which vocabularies for names, for subjects, and for local authorities will get the linked data enrichment. We saw that there we define which vocabularies are active and not active, which ones are defined for the permanent enrichment. And then we did an example with the treasured Polish songs using F3 to have the URIs get automatically added. We saw that they get automatically added using the URI from that table and taking the identifier and putting it wherever it was the squiggly brackets with the 0. Then we removed the URIs, we saved a set, and we ran the unlinked bib headings, so it's as if we have a brand new record. Then we ran the linked bib headings, the preferred term correction, and automatically they got added. Okay, Adina, we have now 13 minutes. Do you think the questions will last 13 minutes, or do we want to show an on-the-fly example?
Let's start by answering questions, and we'll see
Okay.
how the time permits. So I'm going to start from Heather and Tim's question about the partial matching and preventing adding URIs. So the
And
question,
maybe I'll take the questions and just put them large in a Word document so everyone will see what those questions are.
sure.
Go
So
ahead.
the question, okay. So the question is it possible to prevent the addition of the URI if it is only a partial match to the subject heading? So the answer is yes, because there is a customer parameter of supporting linked data for partial linking. And if it's on true, then it will support adding the URIs. If it's false, you will not add URIs for partial linking. So you can control that with the customer parameter. I hope that answers your question. Let's see, there was another long question here that I see from Dan M. We are primarily interested in the person entity card functionality problem. If we enable the person info card in Primo, the list of titles in the library by beneath the person info card is not complete because not all author fields in the bib records are links to LC authorities. Swedish authority records are in VF, but not part of the community zone at present. We do not use local authorities.
Oh,
Our
put
Alma
that
is
one in the
current.
Word. That's a long one.
It is a long one, but we'll get through it and we'll try and answer it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Our Alma is currently set up to automatically link authors to LC authorities. This works for most of the records, but not all. To cover the remaining, we would need to be able to link to the Swedish authority records, but I'm not sure how to approach this. Any suggestions? So one suggestion would be if you import the Swedish authority files as a local authority, then you can use the local link data enrichment configuration to have it link. That's one option. Another option in the future, part of it has to do with BibFrame though, but and we're not here to talk about BibFrame today, but we are part of our linked data service for BibFrame will support lookups to external sources in which you will be able to link and enrich BibFrame records with authorities that are not necessarily part of the community zone. It's a bit more futuristic. I would suggest looking into the local authority option at the moment, as that is the solution we have for MARC records. And if there's anything else you'd like to discuss, feel free to reach out. There was one question that I saw that was sent was sent privately. Is what is the effect of these URIs on the discovery in Primo? I think that's a question that would be relevant for additional people as well. Primo itself uses the linked data for creating the linked data services. At the moment, it's the person entities and autocomplete, and additional linked data services are planned in the future. The URIs themselves to the authorities are more for the librarian side and less for the patron side. As in discovery, I don't necessarily think that for most cases, patrons won't be looking at authority files. If you want it to be available and displayed for users, you can use a normalization rule. I think that's all the questions, unless there's any other
There
questions.
was one here. Maybe everyone can benefit from this one. I'm fuzzy on the value of the local authority for linking to external authorities. And then you answer. Their authorities supported linked data URIs are not part of the Alma community zone. So someone would want to enrich them with URIs. There's also cases where people take an authority record from the community zone, copy it locally, and change it. People use local authorities in that manner too. Not only that it's not in the community zone, but it's in the community zone and you want it a little different.
Thank you. In terms of Dan M's question about Sweden, I've actually received a private request from the National Library of Finland. Sorry, not the Finland have the option, have done something on the matter as well. Sorry, I don't have contact information, but if you can reach out to each other, that would be great. There's another question that just came in.
Yeah, let me
What
copy
if
that one.
Yeah, all right. What if I already have an ID linking configuration in Alma? When enrichment takes place, will Alma overwrite the URIs in subfield 0, where I have my authority ID? It will not overwrite. It will add an additional subfield 0. Per the best practice for using subfield zeros, you can have additional subfield zeros. It's a repeatable field where one can, as long as it's with the same authority. So the ID won't be overwritten by the URI. Will receive two separate subfield zeros. I think that's all the questions for now, unless
Any other questions from anybody? We're not going to do the on-the-fly enrichment. We got 6 minutes left. Any other questions or comments from anybody? Okay, so in that case, we will stop here. As usual, we'll be posting the recording to YouTube, and it will be available from the Education Webinars page and from the 2025 Roadmap Webinar Series page and directly from YouTube, and we'll send out a message when that's available. And we thank everyone for joining us, and we hope to see you next week. Primo V, next discovery experience, and then in another 2 or 3 weeks, I forgot the exact date. Let's go take a look at the exact date. We've got those XSL normalization rules, a huge development. So am I sharing now? Share, here we are. So here, XSL normalization rules May 28th, you can already sign up, and Primo Next Discovery Experience next week, May 13th, you can already sign up. So we'll see everybody next week and May 28th. Have a nice day, and thanks again for joining. Adina, thanks again for your time. Have
pleasure.
a nice
Thank
day,
you, everyone.
everybody. Bye-bye.